Good evening, OPN and other channels that may be watching us. Hey, Lippy, good to see you. I have 253 Pirate here and Cannon Potter with us tonight, otherwise known as Shawn and Rob from Tacoma, and also the world famous live stream show Coffee Talk. So we're lucky to have those guys here with us tonight. Thank you guys for joining us. We really appreciate it. I want to give everybody a really quick update. Welcome here to our channel tonight, guys. Welcome to OPN, and give a shout out to anybody who might be mirroring us tonight. Good to have you, and we're glad to see all the chatters in. So, how's it going with you?
Pretty good, pretty good. I worked today noon to 7, so it's kind of nice to get myself out to work and get that going again. It makes me feel a little bit better about myself, I'm not gonna lie. Get a job and all.
Yeah. Well, maybe the job doesn't make you feel better, but the income has to help, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That is for sure.
So, for people.
Oh, what was I doing before Occupy? All kinds of things I shouldn't have been doing. All kinds of things I shouldn't have been doing. But directly before I came down, I was working at a funky little sub shop in the mall there in Tacoma, and I heard about what was going on. And the first march we did, so I grabbed a hold of my brother, and him and I went down there to kind of march with Tacoma, and then we were going to head out to Seattle.
Coming down to Occupy like 3 days after that first march.
She was sick as a dog too.
Yeah.
I felt so bad for her.
I think it was the typhoid Mary for the Occupy camp, because that illness just kind of spread and stuck around all winter.
Oh, and by the time it got to poor Brian, it put him in the hospital.
Yeah.
Started off as a bad cough and ended up putting somebody in the hospital.
So Shawn single-handedly took down the whole Occupy in Tacoma in the first week, huh?
God, no, it lasted like 3 months. The whole time we were there, it just kept cycling through people, and every time it jumped from one person to another, it just got worse.
Yeah, I don't think you could say I took down the Occupy camp, because it just, it felled. Occupiers does it take to screw in a light bulb? Somebody made that joke.
How many occupiers does it take to screw in a light bulb? None. They screw in tents.
And there's Coffee Talk Comedy, ladies and gentlemen, right here on OPN. Right. You have it. That's great. So at its inception, how large was the Tacoma Occupy? And, their encampment.
Oh, we got up to...
When it first started, it was just like 3 tents and 12 people. So we were spread out among park benches and just wherever on the lawn until the sprinklers came on. And then when it grew to its max, we had roughly 50 tents, all with people in them, and
most of them were 2 to a tent.
Yeah.
So we had about anywhere from 75 to 100 people staying there full time
at its peak.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And how long did that encampment survive before it was evicted?
152 days, 154 days, something like that.
Oh, pretty good. Pretty strong presence.
It lasted the winter.
One of the longest lived encampments on the West Coast, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But they got us like they got everybody else. We have to replant the grass before spring gets here.
Yeah. Which they did.
And
it looks good.
And were you guys pretty much there in the camp for the whole period, or did you come and go? How did that work?
We both gave up our permanent living situation to be at the camp full time. So we were pretty much there from start to finish.
Yep. And how did you feel the organization was there as far as, the working groups and the logistics and all that? Was it organized? Was it chaotic? Was it problematic?
The organization of the camp did a lot better when we separated people who were more into the legislation and community outreach rather than the physical occupation. And we started having 2 completely separate GAs, one where it was just Occupy Tacoma, and that's what they were doing. They were doing Tacoma-based stuff, Occupy-based stuff, how are we going to reach out, how are we going to expand, what are we doing next, so on and so forth. And then a completely separate GA for this is what we should do at the camp, this is what needs to be done here, this is how we should present ourselves over here. And once we got rid of people who were not at the camp making decisions for the camp, the organization went a lot better.
Right. Well, when you guys went through the split, did the two groups still were they able to work together, or was there competition? Yeah, because we see that a lot in a lot of cities that have had split occupations, so to speak. You know that sometimes it becomes competitive, or there's an inability to work together because agendas are different.
So the only inability we really had was the lack of we had some communication problems. They would plan things, and the people at the camp wouldn't hear about it until the day of, when they needed boots on the ground. So there was a little bit of scrambling in that respect. And then people in the camp who had ideas that they wanted to express to the main GA had a difficult time getting that opportunity because, again, the lack of communication. So it became a constant battle to improve the communication between the two groups, so that they could work better with each other. But we didn't have near the problems that other Occupy camps did, as far as things like competition and differing agendas went.
Well, and the split was real gradual, real kind of eased into. It wasn't like on Thursday we decided we're pulling the two of them apart. It was just kind of happened naturally. Whereas there was the people who were more focused on the day-to-day aspects of keeping the park functional and feeding people and making sure everybody was comfortable, and that's what they did. Like our buddy Chris, who showed up within the first month or so, took sanitation under control, just handled it, and he was the garbage guy, so to speak. You know, if it had to do with keeping the place clean, it was on Chris, and he took that on himself. So, you know, everybody kind of micromanaged in their own way, and it worked out pretty well.
People just followed what they knew they were good at, what they believed they needed to be doing for the camp or for the movement, and just kind of went with the flow naturally like that.
Right. So everybody was kind of working to their strengths, and it was a cooperative environment for the most part.
Yeah, we had one guy, Bill, who was really kind of antisocial, talked to a couple people, but was real standoffish with everybody else, never went to an action, but he had a professional background as a sign maker. So he sat around in the park all day long and made signs for us, so that were great stuff. And, you know, we'd take them out to the marches and do our things with them. And
they were great signs.
They were awesome signs, really well done and very, you know, not just like well thought out something to say, but very well done all the way around.
Nicely colored, easy to read, that sort of thing, eye-catching.
What's a good example of the fact that even there's so many diverse people involved in this, that there is a role for everybody if we can help them find it, or give them room to find it, that they can serve the movement in a way that's productive and valuable for everybody. So that's a good object lesson. I love that, because you have the antisocial guy that turned out being a sign maker, so it's great, right? Everybody gets what they need.
We always told people to occupy in the way they see fit.
Oh, I love that. Occupy in the way you see fit. That's fantastic. So you guys stayed through till the Tacoma eviction, I'm guessing. Won't you take us in the timeline about how you came to be where you are now, and why you ended up where you are now? And then we can use that as our point of departure for the rest of the evening.
Well, after about 2 weeks before the camp was shut down, we kind of distanced ourselves, not necessarily on purpose, but it got very difficult to occupy while pregnant. So we moved on to staying in hotel rooms. Some of the viewers in here helped us stay in rooms, and
nutrition became a factor, and temperatures became a factor, and safety and security became concerns.
Right. So we kind of moved on to just doing our show and kind of occupying in our own way.
Well, and suddenly we needed to find housing, we needed to find jobs, our priorities shifted a little bit. When before we could give up jobs and housing to just occupy and only occupy. When a fetus came into the picture, we had to, readjust what we were doing.
Right.
So we kind of scrambled to try and make that happen, and it got to the point where we were really looking at, after this couple days here in this hotel room, we've got nowhere to go. We're going to be staying in our car.
We started running out of places we could stay, running out of families, running out of friends, running out of our resources, and it got to a point where we were just going to be living in the car.
And a few of the viewers here Lippy, surprise, surprise, and Ruby and a couple others decided they were not going to have that, and they helped us out to get across with gas money and some things like that. So we, too much chastising from my mother and other families. Much to the dismay of family, we packed up our car and drove across, and 10 days later, here we are in New Jersey, dealing with the most vicious culture shock I've ever encountered. These people really talk like that out here. That's not a stereotype. This, hey, how you doing, is real. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. So were you originally from Tacoma area or the Pacific Northwest, and then you rolled into New Jersey, right? You fit in just like transparent, right?
Yeah, we fit in like oil and water.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't tell we're from out of town.
No, not at all.
The car's filled with bumper stickers from every state we've been in. It looks like a tourist car. People keep overcharging us for things.
Oh my God.
Because we look like we can be overcharged for things.
We pulled into a parking garage in downtown. The price said $35 when we went to leave. She said, that'll be $48. I'm like, what?
And somehow there was an 18% tax on the parking job they did.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness sakes. Man, what a tough transition. So I want to back up just a little bit because something about your story brought this question to my mind, and it may be getting a little too personal. If it is, you can exercise your right not to answer it. But so at the beginning of Tacoma, you were both in a position where you said, I'm going to let go of my worldly situation right now, and I'm going to be an occupier. And you knew each other before that, right? So you guys collectively decided to occupy. Yes? No?
What's really funny about that is we knew each other for about a year before the Occupy happened, and as far as she was concerned, she wouldn't bother scraping me off the bottom of her boot with a knife.
I hated this guy so much. We did not get along.
She was convinced I couldn't tie my own shoes.
Yeah, no. The only reason why we had a civil working relationship at all was because he continually brought me Oreos as some kind of weird peace offering.
Worked. What do you want?
Like, don't yell at me.
Right? I bring you Oreos, don't yell at me. I actually referred to her as a harpy for a while. She was, her sisters and her mother I referred to as the Harpy Den. Going over to that house was, I did it as little as freaking possible.
Yeah, we didn't get along before he talked me down into going down into Occupy.
Okay. So you went to Occupy, and you were doing that, and so you felt like at that time that was a good, giving up your other life and being occupiers was a good move, and it suited your needs, and you felt like you were doing the right thing. No second guessing that. You were comfortable with that decision.
Well, I was living in a place where they were in-home healthcare providers. I was working to be an in-home healthcare provider myself, and they got a letter in the mail from the union saying that if they were found to be participating with Occupy, not worded exactly, but if you read between the lines, it was very clear what they were saying, that if you were participating with Occupy or found to be helping them in any way, shape, or form, that they would pull your membership and you would lose your livelihood. And being the two breadwinners of that house were both working for the same union, I kind of packed up my gear and left because I wasn't going to force their hand. I didn't want to have to force them into doing something that could potentially ruin their life.
Right. That's
not fair. They had a special needs child in the house, and it would have just been horrible. I would have hated myself forever if I was the reason they lost all that. So.
Right.
That was a good part of my decision to go. The other part of it was I just wanted to be there all the time, be part of it all the time. So my brother was staying there. It made that a little easier. The transition was easier.
Mine happened accidentally. I became a part of Occupy, and as a direct result, kind of lost my place to stay. Mm-hmm. So that wasn't so much a choice that I made for myself, but a choice that was thrust upon me, and I just kind of rolled with it because, what else am I going to do? Right. I wasn't going to stop being an occupier and beg to come back,
Yep. And So where I was going with this is when the baby came and your priorities had to shift. Was that a difficult transition for you to make from being full-time occupiers in the camp to recognizing, okay, we have to do these other things, or I love what you said about, you occupy how you can and where you are, and I think that's a great lesson. But I was wondering, when you made that decision to, to move forward in your life and change the way you occupy, was that a difficult decision?
I think it's only just now getting difficult because before, at the time, it's really a no-brainer. Baby comes first. Duh. It becomes a very serious situation of health and safety, and so baby comes first. Duh. But now it's getting to be more difficult because we have a much more stable situation, and so we have to intentionally miss out on things like going to Chicago, going to NATO. Because of our current situation, and that's when it really started getting hard. Was in today's date, because in Tacoma I could go to all the actions I wanted to, and the Tacoma cops were not going to be violent. They weren't going to slam anybody around. They weren't going to do much of what you see in some other places. No, just because you got tased once doesn't mean I was going to get slammed around or what have you.
Technically, I got tased twice, but whatever.
My point is that out here in New York, I could just be standing in the wrong spot, or in Chicago, I could just be standing in the wrong spot, or, some of the other places that we could go. So I had to really think about which actions I could go to and which ones I could not go to. And the ones that I cannot go to are getting more and more yeah, because now it's not just a police brutality issue, it's a physical ability issue. Mm-hmm. How long can I really stay on my feet in my third trimester?
Yeah, a 12-hour march can be a little difficult.
Exactly, because they're marching several miles by the end of the day, and so we're having to sit out of more and more actions, and so it's getting progressively more difficult as the pregnancy nears its end.
So you have to pick and choose selectively in incorporating a bunch of other variables, it sounds like.
Yep.
Well, I think we've kind of moved on from the boots on the ground occupier, so to speak, the foot soldier, which was a little more difficult for me, I think, because I grew up literally since the age of a fetus. I've been in protests and I've been a soldier on the ground, so to speak.
Second generation hippie.
Literally, my first protest, I was in utero. My second one, I was on her back. My third one, I was in a stroller. I've been doing this since I was an embryo. So to change from the soldier on the ground to the reporter of all this has been a little more difficult for me. I was chomping at the bit. I wanted to go to Chicago so bad, I could literally taste it, and it was metallic.
No, that was just the dent you created in your forehead when you hit the ceiling.
Oh, you're going to narc me on that? I don't like you a little bit right now.
So let's talk a little bit about your show. How was that conceived? When was its inception? And kind of maybe what your goals are with that and what you're trying to accomplish with Coffee Talk?
We're just basically trying to put the news out that the mainstream won't. We throw our own little spin on it. It's I don't know if there really is a main mission to Coffee Talk other than to get the information out there that normally doesn't get put out there.
Originally, we were trying to open communication up for the occupied Tacoma camp. We were the only people who knew anything about the outside world. And then we kind of morphed into when less of the camp followed what we were doing and we had more viewers from the other side of the country, we became the Occupied Break Room because we would inject some lighthearted humor into the horrible events that were happening around all of the time. And people would come watch our show because it's not just another video of injustice. It's not just another story of police brutality. It's not just another downer. It's the wins and the fun and the lighthearted side of Occupy that helped people kind of keep feeling rejuvenated. They kept referring to our room as the break room.
Mm-hmm. We did things like stream when Jose and a few other people decided to have a wrestling match in the Occupy camp, and we streamed that, and we tried to induce or inject a lot more humor.
Science of play. We played. We did a lot with the science of play.
Yeah, we did our best to kind of keep everybody in a good mood, and sometimes that meant glitter bombing your fellow occupier, and doing goofy stuff like
random pocket items.
Yeah, that was my favorite game ever. You would count to 3, and everybody would pull out an item in their pocket, and whoever's was the most random won, and there wasn't any kind of prize. It was just random, and I won for a while with a little miniature golden Eiffel Tower that I carried around,
yeah,
and then
I took the cake with a little rubberized fetus that they gave me when they told me I was pregnant. It wiggled.
It was this little rubber fetus they handed it to us. You can keep that. And the first thing everybody did was squeeze its head. You'd show it to somebody, the first thing to do is squeeze its head, like it's one of those little eye-popping things.
It doesn't look like a baby, though. It's a fetus, you know what I mean? So it's like this alien little looking thing. Or something like...
I'm getting like chastised. I don't know if you saw, but somebody said I was not pronouncing coffee talk correctly. And then the others, coffee talk. Coffee talk.
Now. That's just how people say out here.
Yeah.
Right. It's not weird out here. In Tacoma, to say coffee talk made them kind of look at you funny. Out here, they're like, and?
Yeah, your point is. And then Ruby's calling you guys the Lucy and Desi of Occupy, which I think is a really great comment. Yeah, I got it right. I have language skills. So the show's still going on. You guys are still doing that every day. Can you tell us a little bit about like how it comes together? Do you just review material from the day before and you present that, or you just do it all off the seat of your pants and wing it?
You guys would be amazed at how much winging it we do.
Well, sometimes we spend the day with the computer screen up, and just whatever news comes in we add throughout the day, and we follow several important names on Twitter that provide news. And so, hey, this just came up on Twitter, look at this now. Other times when we're specifically busy and we're not just sitting there staring at the computer screen all day, we'll get up a few hours before the show and look what's been happening so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, Kitty's blog, she's been with us since the very beginning. She's been helping us out a lot. She does her own blog, and we use that on the show along with a couple of other sites. Huffington Post, their Occupy section has been cranking out some awesome stuff lately, and we do a lot of YouTube searches because we figured out how to work all the live streaming so we can get videos incorporated, and we, as we've gone along, we've learned how to play with the program and really create a better show.
I have 100-something friends on Facebook that are only Occupy pages because they didn't make pages that people could go like. They made pages for people to friend.
Right.
And so I started adding all those so that we could be directly connected to the news as it happens.
Yeah. Made ourselves a coffee talk page on Facebook, and we get posts on there, and through that page we went through and liked every Occupy, anything that we could come up with, from Occupy breastfeeding to Occupy I can't read that, it's not in English,
right?
So we get stuff from all over the globe too, everything from
stay plugged in,
Arabic to Chinese to German to Russian to all the way back and around. So
do you consider yourselves now like your primary participation in Occupy is that as reporters and jesters? Because I like that.
Yeah, I would have to. I try to avoid using the word journalism because I do not have the formal education for it, and we cannot be completely unbiased. We do our best to stay unbiased and just kind of report what's happening and report everybody's point of view. But man,
I can get on one.
We're not stupid enough to just agree with everything everybody says either. So
no, we're a little opinionated.
Yeah, and we're not professional enough to just report it without any kind of opinion. So I definitely try to avoid the word journalist just so that I don't insult an actual journalist who actually does their job well.
Right.
But yeah, that we've basically taken just the reporter standpoint. If I could, I would like to start up some kind of live streaming setup so that I can still do something even though I have a stroller going on, because again, we can no longer form daisy chains and get the pepper spray and
stroller cam.
That's exactly what I was going to say, stroller cam. From the viewpoint of the Bambino, you could like beta test that now. Just go ahead and rig it up like where the baby sits, and then go out there and push it around and see. That would be a great viewpoint.
As if people don't look at us weird enough when we're walking down the street with a camera. No, we're gonna put the camera in the car seat.
Well, Lippy got the baby a little its own little live stream camera toy.
Oh my God!
Thing. It's like this little Elmo camera toy, and it looks like it's filming, but we wrote "Film the Police" all over it. So it could be like a little baby live streamer.
I love that. I love pram cam. Ruby said pram cam. What's the biggest lesson you guys have learned as part of Occupy?
Oh God, humility. I think right off the bat, I would say I learned how to be a little more humble in my world.
First, you learned how to be an attention whore.
Oh yeah, I did. I have never argued that whatsoever. Apparently, I was unaware of this up until about 7 months ago. Apparently, I'm a huge attention whore. I did not know that before Occupy started.
And then to turn around and have to learn humility is
tricky.
Yeah.
It all started with a poke in the eye.
I personally, I think I didn't so much learn, but I reaffirmed this belief that I had that there just really are no boundaries. And it's something that I always believe, like, why do I have to fit this mold? Why do I have to fit this cog? Why do I have to be in this machine? And everyone's always told me, adults and authority figures, you have to get the education. Why? You have to get a job. You have to make money no matter how bad the job is. Everyone just hates their job. We just accept it.
Why?
Yeah. And so over the course of Occupy, I learned that you don't actually have to. You don't really have to. It is possible to build another world. It is possible to live it your life your own way. And yes, if you're willing to give up money, which I definitely am because I hate it so much, it is possible to not have to fit into what they consider acceptable employment, what they consider acceptable living. You can just do what makes you happy, even if you happen to be the new sushi guy at a local market.
Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with being the new
smell like
sushi
steamed
guy.
Shrimp. I smell of steamed shrimp and crab legs.
Yeah, but at least you work at like a little mom and pa market instead of a McDonald's somewhere. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I do like that.
Step out of the corporate.
And the fact that I got to kind of sell myself with my experiences as a true Northwestern, I really kind of strong-armed my way into that job with my knowledge of fish. And not even joking, I really kind of stalked the boss for like 2 weeks and was like, no, I can do this. He says, can you fillet a fish? I said, dude, if I can do it drunk on a floating dock and not have any bones end up in the fillet, I can do it on shift, no problem. I'm going to do it with or without the blindfold. And he started laughing.
Well, I think, in listening to this, I want us all to band together and help you work on your confidence just a little bit. You need to not be so timid. That's what I think I'm getting from this.
If he would come out of his shell,
which is happy. Absolutely hilarious, because if you guys had met me a year and a half, 2 years ago, I am not even close to the same person. I was hiding in my shell, very timid, I was a very beaten man. I was underneath boots, and I was trampled upon, and I was a beat. I was a whipping boy at best, and yeah. That's not even a joke.
And so did the movement help you rise up and speak out and find your own voice?
Yeah, it helped. There was a vicious breakup that I went through right before, about 3-4 months before Occupy happened, and that kind of lit this fire, so to speak, this very, very much so angry fire that I kind of ran with those first little while.
Yay, nihilism!
Yay! I was like, no, everything's gonna burn. I went from like very quiet and in my shell to I'm gonna burn you all to the ground, and I found a happy medium with Occupy. It kind of turned itself down a little bit. I wasn't quite so crazed, but I had my moments.
He still knows how to rabble rouse.
Oh man!
Give him a chance, and a bunch of kids around him will have a bunch of pitchforks and torches and ready to go tear a building apart.
And so you're the one that provides the calming balance to the equation, Shawn?
Yeah, we've always kind of operated on this basis of yin and yang, and I definitely mellow him out like crazy. But then by the same time, like my mellow nature is to a point of where I just have like zero ambition. You know what I mean? I don't have enough ambition to try and go out and make money. I don't have enough ambition to really do much of anything with my life. And so he infused a little bit of passion into my being that helped me even go down and become an occupier in the first place, because, you know, just that getting you to care thing.
Right. Were you?
Yeah,
I
go
was
ahead.
going to
Sorry.
ask Shawn if she was politically engaged and politically active before Occupy.
Um, I knew enough to have my own opinions, and I voted.
Right.
But I didn't get involved with any. That's not entirely true. I did send money and help the HRC, the Human Rights Campaign, to help get the Shepherd Law written in, but that was the only thing ever.
Hmm. And now do you feel like you're more politically engaged and aware?
Well, we've done things like never, ever, ever step into a Walmart ever again. It was like, I don't know if I'm politically engaged so much, so that you can really check me off as a Democrat or a Republican. I'm just a free thinker,
Hmm.
and we try to act with some kind of social responsibility when it comes to where we will go spend our money and our time, avoiding some of the more evil and humanely corrupt kind of places. But I don't know if that makes me more politically minded per se, if it's just that whole lifestyle change of shopping local and.
Well, I think that conscious choice is a revolutionary action. You know, because we're so desensitized and we always pick the default thing. So if we're consciously choosing, like you say, to avoid a Walmart, or how you choose to engage with what public ports at all, that's a revolutionary act. So, you know, under my definition, that counts as politically engaged because, as Chris Johansson said, to be alive is to be political, whether or not we know it. You know, so there's a couple of questions we want to catch. If Z can pause so I can catch them. Rob may have seen them come up. First
Yeah,
are
I did.
I want to say sapphires towards the end, like for a
Sure.
closing thing. So, but our forum asks, what are your opinion on Occupy Seattle did with violent acts on May Day, and did it change your plans for future Occupy involvement?
Well, see, this is a difficult question for me to answer because, on the one hand, I do not agree with blind violence, but planned direct acts of vandalism, I do agree with, and I know that makes me very unpopular in some circles, but going down to just smash stuff because you're bored is not the same thing as going and targeting every Wells Fargo in the city on the same day. Those kinds of actions will cause a very specific person or people, you know, CEO or what have you, to take a very large chunk of money out of his pocket. It may be one day, one suck afternoon that he's got to deal with, but it still has an impact. And honestly, we create jobs by doing that. Some poor schmuck has to come clean up the glass. Another poor schmuck has to install the new glass. You know, so there is job creation in
Not to
all of
mention the
that.
guys that have to make the windows.
Not the yeah, the guy's making the windows, the guy's, you know, the secretary that now has something else to do because he's got to call and report there, get this set up. So I I won't say that I approve of their actions on May Day and on oh sorry and on a couple of other occasions where the Black Bloc has broken out and broken things, but like I said, it's kind of difficult because I don't want to agree too much with them, but I can't really argue against it either. It's if done right, it's very effective.
We got into this big theological debate, I believe, over live on the show because the very basic question came out of where do you draw the line between targeted vandalism that has a point to it, a very clear message to it versus random vandalism with no point. You see, because in Seattle, it was very much so a gray area. When things like that happen in Oakland, we know why it happens in Oakland. Because in Oakland, people have next to died or almost died, nearly died, and the people are sick of it, and there's this righteous anger that they have because of it. And so people don't necessarily agree with how Oakland handles it, but they understand why Oakland does it the way that they do. In Seattle, there is the distinctive possibility that they seriously were just smashing stuff for the sake of smashing stuff. And while Seattle has brutal police as well, it's nowhere near the grade that Oakland and DC and New York have. So there is that possibility that it was just random, even though they were smashing federal buildings. So we got into this whole debate of how do you know what the message is, because maybe they thought there was a message, but it's completely lost on us because all we see is a bunch of broken windows. So does it count as proper targeted violence if the general public doesn't get it? Or at the end of the day, does it only matter that this bigwig had to pay money?
Well, I guess the same argument can be made for Occupy in general. Our direct actions mean something only because we're preaching to the choir, or does the larger general populace see the point in all of it?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, theological difference, viewpoints, perspectives. What do you think is violent? It all gets into this big gray area with many, many layers.
That's a good
Occupy
point, and it can lead. It's a good segue for my next question. I've been asking this, recently because of those sorts of conversations. Is the movement seems to be, I won't say divided, but there's a lot of conversation going on between reform or revolution. With reform being working in the system, revolution being tearing down the system. So I'm always interested on kind of where people's positions are on that. So do you guys want to speak to that, reform versus revolution?
I personally think that we need a little bit of both. I think without guys working the system from the inside out, those that believed in revolution would hit an impenetrable fortress of just a wall of corporate money and power. And that are being made right out from under their feet. They would never be able to win. The fact of the matter is that revolution in this country would fail because the U.S. Army, the National Guard, they're better trained, more men, and it just an out and out revolution would do nothing but invite them to come smack us out of the sky with some justification for the most general public of us. So the fact that about only 50% of Americans agree with Occupy speaks to how well we would be able to get away with a revolution. But by the same token, there's always that saying, how are you going to fix something with a bunch of broken tools? The guys that are in reform, they're trying to work their way into a system that will not let them. You know what I mean? They're going to have to be the dandelion coming through the cement, basically, before they see any kind of sunlight in actually getting into the system enough to do any real reform. So they need people who believe in revolution to create noise, to create awareness, to create, if nothing else, distract or to help to pull attention to what's going on, to get more people involved, to drag more people in. And in my personal opinion, they go hand in hand. We cannot have one without the other, because either one without the other one would fail utterly.
And see, I lean more towards the revolution side of things. I am a firm believer in this system. I have been preaching it for a while now, is that they need to all be fired in mass, and we have one big, massive election.
Go Iceland style.
Go Iceland style, yeah. Exactly. No, you know what? All of you, go home. Yeah. You're done. All of you. Every last stinking one of you, take your crew with you. Your secretary, your assistant, all of you. You're gone. Pack your stuff up. You got 12 hours. Get out. And then we do a mass re-election. And I would, hopefully that, in my head, that would at least generate a kickstart in the right direction. It may not fix things. We may just get some more puppets in there, but at the same time, it would prove a point.
It would prove a point. If you could successfully make that happen, just fire everybody. If you could successfully, like Iceland did,
mm-hmm.
Then it would definitely prove the point. The guys that would replace him would be under a very watchful eye
Right? It's like, nah, they will fire all of us. They'll do it. How do you think you got your job?
Yeah.
They'll do it.
I think we're starting
No.
to see a little bit of that in Greece because they just had their elections. They couldn't form a coalition government, so now they're going to have new elections. So I think we're seeing that in a little more animated fashion than Iceland, but it's starting to take a toehold. That people are willing to overthrow the existing paradigm and try something new and different, and I believe there's great value in it. And that's a non-violent methodology of revolution. So I agree with what Shawn's saying that we need bits of both of it to make it balance out and work, because there is huge resistance to us making change. These people are seriously invested in maintaining the status quo. So
Well, never let us not foolishly think that those with power and money will simply allow us to vote away their power and money. It's not going to happen either. No matter how we do it, regardless of whether or not we choose revolution or reform, we have to take it. They're not going to give it to us. We have to take it.
excellent, excellent, by whatever means possible. So, what do you think our biggest challenge as a movement towards social justice is?
Go ahead.
I would have to say so many differing opinions on what social justice exactly is. We have so many different voices and so many different opinions. I mean, this is why we have a representative government in the first place, because the fact of the matter is if all of the millions of Americans speak at the same time, that's a lot of voices to go through that bogs down the process. Anyone who's ever sat through a GA of more than 10 people knows exactly what I'm talking about. You have just sometimes the most basic of things you cannot come to a decision on, like whether or not the porta potty should go over here or over here.
Man. No, it took somebody going, you know what? You all just shut up. It's going right there. It just took somebody going dictator on it to make something happen at times. So
yeah, but the problem with the representative government that we're seeing so far is that now our voices are not getting heard. So it's just like the voter system is a good prime example how our votes are counted more and more in secret, and how if you voted for this guy who represents this government candidate, now you've also voted for that government candidate, whether you actually did or not, or however they decide to count it.
Yeah, you vote for Joe Blow, who supports Santorum, so now you've actually voted for Santorum.
Right.
And you're like, wait, but that's not what I voted for at all.
Well, that's how Santorum won a couple of states that were... What, really?
Yeah,
really win that?
Voted for his underling and not Santorum,
yeah,
and he got Santorum got the vote.
So much corruption, and like the heart vote. Our voting system is the very heart of democracy. It is the heart of democracy, but it's been poisoned. It's been taken over. Even on the Senate floor, we did a story recently where there was video footage of the senators running around the room voting for each other.
God, there's 8 people on the floor and 72 votes placed. Wait, what? Pardon me? I mean, the guy's reaching over to this desk, and then this desk, and then this desk.
They're getting up and walking around.
And if you look around, they're focused on one guy, but if you watch the whole video, like, you watch the whole thing, there's people in the background doing it, there's people in the foreground doing it. It was like everybody in the house was in on it. And the fact that they are voting on whether or not to increase heavy fines for voter fraud. Yeah. They're voting on what to do about voter fraud while fraudulently making votes.
My point is that some of the voting, the actual true voting process that you might see in various occupies end up taking hours to get through, because when they're done correctly, that's how much time it gets to get through the actual process of democracy. And that's one of our biggest challenges, is people lack that much patience, and they lack that much compassion and understanding for the differences in theology. It's this guy wants to do a direct action, but we consider that vandalism, so we don't support it at all, and now we want to micromanage what he's going to do. And that was a really big problem, because people wouldn't just let other people occupy in the way that they needed to. They wanted to control how everybody tried to occupy in the same way, or try to get everybody to do the same sort of actions, because there is that, you can ask somebody, does this action count as violence, or does this action count as vandalism? And there's a huge gray area. It's never just a black and white
you
yes
ask
or no.
7 people, you get 7 different answers.
Yeah, because it's just very much so everybody's personal opinions, everybody's personal belief systems, and people want to unify, and they think that, for some reason, they think that unifying is going to require them to all behave and think the same way.
Mm-hmm. So we have a million different agendas, a million different questions, a million different voices, which I think we all acknowledge. And I hear what you're saying, but what sort of methodologies do you think that we could use to get to a common? I tend not to want to use the word consensus because I don't think it's the most efficient thing in the world. Maybe it's the best thing, but in order to get things done, at some point we have to make a decision. So how do we reconcile all those voices and agree to move forward?
I think that we have to go even more basic than Occupy itself and remember some very simple principles like love and understanding, and come at it from a place of that with an open mind. Because at the end of the day, and Tacoma was a much smaller scale than New York and Seattle and other bigger places, so we made it work on a small scale. At the end of the day, and the guys that wanted to do outreach focused in on community, and the guys that wanted to do legislation focused in on legislation, and the guys that wanted to do direct action formed their own affinity groups and did direct action. Mm-hmm. So, and you see something very similar on a much bigger scale in New York, where people get out in the streets and you have this group of people over here doing a play. Right. That no one else knows about. It's just this group has decided to do a play, and this group over here has decided to do a teach-in, and this group over here is doing something completely different. And they all stop trying to control each other and start working, just kind of focusing on what they're doing and realizing that everybody has their role to play. Everybody has a part that they could be doing. And Occupy has to address so many different problems at once that there really is room for everybody to do what they think is best. So we have to go back to basic principles of love and understanding so that we can open our minds to what they're doing and not so much try to micromanage and control our brothers and sisters around us.
Yeah, that was one of the problems I noticed in our Occupy Tacoma, was that we had a handful of people that were, for lack of a better phrase, power hungry, and did everything they could to have the Occupy following in their footsteps and doing what they were told, so to speak.
Well, getting their own vision of utopia.
Yeah, they were just, you're going to do what I say because I am part of the GA, so I am going to tell you what to do. And they got, I don't want to say ousted, but they got put in their place pretty quickly by the rest of us. And it wasn't like one guy saying, "Oh no, you can go to hell with that." It was the whole group kind of looking at him and thumbing their nose at him, to get the hint across that that's not going to fly.
Ego became a huge problem. That just coming into a situation where you're automatically assuming that you're right. Yeah. It goes back to the old proverb of someone who already has a full cup cannot fill it anymore. How are you going to learn anything if you just know that you're right? You just come into it knowing that you're right. No, that's not open-minded at all. That's not letting other people in. That's waiting for your turn to talk and not actually engaging in conversation, not actually learning and growing and connecting with people.
Yeah, I like that, and that part of, how we came up with our channel name is other possibilities, because I'm always like, we need to work together to allow room for other possibilities, to realize that we all, to have a full cup is not desirable, because if there's a full cup, there's no room for anything to happen. So that was a great analogy. Our forum has another question. Rob, in your opinion, will Occupy have any role in the elections this November? If so, what?
I think if we have any kind of effect at all, it'll be minimal. I am more worried about what I'm looking at with these elections is if Obama continues on and gets a second term, we will be able to continue the fight as we are. If Romney or somebody like that gets in, and I'm not even going with the Republican well. I'm going with that kind of mindset well. It could be a Democrat with that same kind of mindset.
Just to shut it down.
The Occupy is going to be in a world of hurt.
Well, with NDAA being legal and
already.
Yeah, already.
And we're going to, if we don't see I don't even want to call it pro-Occupy president, but somebody who's not viciously, not a rabid anti-Occupy.
A pro-First Amendment president.
Yeah, as long as they're okay with the First Amendment, we're going to be all right. But if we get somebody like, may the fates help us, but Santorum or something like, someone like that in the office, I hesitate to say it will be an all-out war.
Well,
but
we keep getting articles of like American re-education camps for people who have fallen into dissent against the government, and that's just another fancy word for concentration camp. And like, really, re-education? No. And NDAA being legal, it can get very scary, and depending on who ends up getting elected, I think. I personally worry about the pacifier effect, though. Somebody makes the right speeches and endorses the correct things and gives us a few of our jobs and gives us a couple of our schools and shoves a pacifier in our mouths like they did in the 60s, and then continues along their way as we blindly, okay, we're done.
Right. And I could definitely see that happening. And I'm afraid it's going to happen with Obama-esque president.
Yeah.
Because we're going to get pacified, and if it's a Romney-esque president, we're going to get stomped out. And it's not even going to be quiet. They're going to put it on Fox News, and we're going to be terrorists, and our beer-making equipment will be PVC tubing for pipe bombs, and the level of crap. They even tried to charge me with inciting a riot.
Yeah.
So that minimal effort that I put into that action was tried to be called inciting a riot.
Well,
what about these poor bastards who actually are trying to incite a riot and they get them for something, man?
Well, let's not forget, we saw footage of people in Iraq, soldiers in Iraq, reporting that these people had guns so that they could shoot them. But when you watch the video, they had cell phones and cameras, and the cell phones and cameras are being so dangerous to the police force nowadays that it seems like they're becoming criminalized in their own right. So that I think it's becoming a little bit more dangerous for the journalist out there, regardless of who gets elected next.
Lippy asked if you think that Occupy has influenced certain banking issues that are coming to light now.
Well, I think it goes back to the pacifier effect when Obama created the bank's work group to go out and see who had done what exactly to cause the bubble bursting financial meltdown that happened. I think that was very much so a pacifier. It was very much so a let's get those guys on my side kind of move to me. It seemed...
Well, still nobody's been prosecuted. They've successfully pointed fingers at few key people, and still nobody's been prosecuted.
Yeah, that's what I mean by it. That's how I figured it was a pacifier, because in about a week you could get a list of names of, okay, you did this, you did that, and you did this, and then you could take them to the gallows, so to speak. And if they had done that, I think you would see a lot more support for Obama and his administration throughout the Occupy. If he had actually taken these people out and publicly denounced them and shamed them in front of everybody and their mama, he would have gotten a lot more support. There would be a lot less Obama bashing in the Occupy.
Right.
But as it stands now, he's just given us a pacifier and done what everybody else has done. Oh, you shouldn't have done that. Here's some more money.
No, well, and the only thing he can really do about it at this point is he's talking banking reform to stop it from ever happening again. But I personally want to see retribution for those who already did it.
Right.
Because there should be, I don't know, for most corporate industries, there's some kind of moral code of ethic that if you violate, you can be criminally prosecuted, and it's not necessarily just the loss of life. I mean, look at Enron.
Yeah.
And we're not getting anything like that. The banks were just able to buy their way out of this situation, and...
Yeah, Dick Cheney laughing on national news the whole time.
Yeah.
Laughing in our face. He said, I direct quote, "I could care less what the American people think. And he said that while he was vice president.
Which is a good illustration of what the problem is. I mean, in a nutshell.
Yeah, that and George
Those
Bush,
arrogant bastards. That's, excuse my language. It's my channel, so I can talk.
They have been not just accused, but found guilty of war crimes in, help me out here.
Overseas,
overseas, and that country has taken it to the UN, and the UN is looking at it and taking it seriously. So seriously, as a matter of fact, that George Bush tried to write in legislation that would pardon him and his entire staff from the war crimes he committed during the 9/11 incidents.
I would love to see that come to. I would, because we were watching the History Channel on like the kind of sadistic killer that Hitler was back in World War II, and it struck me. I was like, just thinking to myself, and I think at one point I said it out loud. I wonder if history will describe George Bush that way.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh.
Well, we could go on with that for a long time, and clearly I could get riled up, but I don't want to get on my soapbox. This is your interview. So all of us want to know, what's your next step in Occupy?
Well, if I can, I would like to get a bit of a live streaming rig so that we can have a little mommy and me
live stream.
Yeah, film crew going on there.
Yeah, I would like to see us do a little more boots on the ground action. We obviously have to switch over to the live streamer side of things and not be the daisy chainer.
Oh, we don't near have the equipment for that.
But
so
right
now we're just a body in the crowd at this point.
Yeah, and that I am stuck in this very strange place between that's exactly what I want to be doing and that's not enough. Because I like to be the body in the crowd. I like that. Don't get me wrong. But
you know how to get tased properly as well.
I know I do, and I know exactly like some of our other streamers, Tim and Occupy Carlisle and stuff. I know how to get my face right in the middle of what's going on, and I wouldn't say provoke police, but I'm not exactly polite.
But just know this much of the legal situation to know what you are and are not allowed to do as far as that's concerned. So that when they arrest you, you have a way to go into court and.
Well, we'd like to get you guys back on the streets, and I think the baby cam is just a great idea. So we have to pursue that. So I'm going to open up for some more questions. Ruby asked, "Are you attempting to organize a march on the United Nations?"
Yes, as a matter of fact. That came up on Coffee Talk middle of last week, right before the NATO thing kicked off. I believe that if we being Occupy and we being all those people that are associated with Occupy, make a march on the UN building and we focus it. This harps back to the question we asked about all the different messages. We make it very clear that there is one message to this march and this action. It's why is the UN not protecting the human rights? Period.
Human rights violations.
We don't go in with all the down with the banks and the blah 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 blah, all that other.
No, but we can carry so many of our collective various issues, be it banks or student loans or police brutality or what have you, kind of all fizzle down to the very basic violation of human rights. According to the UN has its own constitution that it writes up that it suggests that other countries partake in. And I believe there's 20 some odd points, and some of them include that human beings have the right to things like job security and things like that. So we would have to look at the UN at their own and address what they think their own system of how people should be treated, their own opinions, their own lecture, their own finger pointing, and say, hey, why do you step in over here with this country, but you don't step over here with this country?
Yep.
It's still a human rights violation, and while they have a base in New York, and they're silent, absolutely silent.
Yeah, and I've got this.
The Homeland Security is buying bullets. Homeland Security. They don't deal in overseas. They deal in homeland. They're buying bullets, enough bullets to wage a 7-year war against the American people, and we just have to sit and watch in horror as it happens.
Yeah.
I agree. So I think a march on the UN with a focused message is a great idea. I'm behind that. Twinkles up as they do in the things, you know. Our forum has another question, um,
Shocking.
asking, now that you're in New Jersey, do you see your local Occupy more active in the movement than it was in Tacoma, and why so?
Depends on what you mean by local, because Bergen County, our local
VG.
our local octogenarians. Sorry to interrupt there. Uh, our local octogenarian occupiers are fairly inactive, but in a good way. You know, they're very specific. When they go out on an action, it's well planned and it's well thought out. Whereas Tacoma would just kind of create one on the fly and run with it. You know, sometimes. Where now with New York, oh my God, we're talking apples and oranges when we're talking OWS versus Occupy Tacoma. It's apples and oranges. There's really no way to compare them. While I did like the personalized way that Occupy Tacoma was, because it was such a small Occupy,
our community.
We knew each other, and it wasn't. We were big fish, little pond kind of thing. You know, everybody in the Occupy Park in general was a bigwig in Tacoma, I want to say, like Lee and Jose and Joy, and
you really had a voice, and you could really lead people. You could start a group. You could be very prominent. We were on the cover or in the newspaper. I can't tell you how many times because there's few people to report on in the Occupy, so it would be like the same 7 people in the newspaper, and so we would have clippings of ourselves. Now, if you look at pictures of New York actions, we're in almost 0 of them because there's just so many people. They take a picture of the 30,000 people on the streets in New York right now, and we're somewhere in there.
It's like this vicious game of Where's Waldo, you know?
Right. But I think I appreciate more the room to grow. That was the biggest frustrating thing about being in Tacoma and they occupied there and staying in that Tacoma, and was that we had kind of capped out on our ability to help things, and we wanted to do so much more. We had so many better ideas, so many more things that we wanted to plan that we didn't have resources for, and we just we were at a complete stall, at a standstill. So out here we have much more room to grow, even if we have to wait to do any growing until after we figure out how we're going to work the baby into
after
it.
You stop growing.
Yeah.
We got to figure out how to grow once she stops growing.
But we have limitless potential because it's just New York City, and so I'm excited to get dirty with that.
I've already started to make some connections. Some of the people like some networking at this last major action Mayday. I was approached and asked to stick around to help with tactical because the guy kind of recognized me, recognized who I was, and what we had done in the Occupy in general. And I had noticed this guy kind of playing runner and being a little more organized. He had an earpiece at one point through the march. So I came to him with information that I would get, say cops were moving in down the block, or
Rob has a habit of standing near cops and listening to them talk on their radios.
So, that kind of information, all of a sudden now I have it, not just the PD. So I go running over to the guy with the earpiece and let him know, and then
it goes over walkie-talkie. Next thing you know, we're getting Twitter updates about it.
It's been 30 seconds,
Yep.
So I've got my own set of skills, and I was asked to stick around and help with tactical, and there were other things that I've been asked to help with and be part of, and I haven't been able to. Distance and time being the 2 major factors, it's really difficult to get into New York.
It costs a lot of money to go down into New York and find parking and pay for parking, especially when you aren't employed. So we really had to limit which actions we can go into New York for.
So I think that kind of answered Sue's question. She asked if you had been involved in any of the working groups, and if so, which ones. But
not directly out here in Washington. We had, working groups.
We avoided work groups. We made fun of work groups because they seem to sit around and talk about working and never actually working.
Yeah, the people that got things done just did it. They grabbed 6 people from the park and said, let's go do this action, and they went and did it, whereas the work groups would sit around for 2 weeks talking about how awesome they are, and then finally get around to talking.
So much time talking about process and rules and things like that they didn't actually get any work done.
That's one of the other things about Tacoma, though, is Tacoma is very fight the power-oriented in general. As a populace, Tacoma is very, you know what? No.
Just the whole area, Seattle, Tacoma area is
Very,
just,
very punk rock.
Yeah.
For those of you who really understand what that means, Seattle, Tacoma is very punk. They don't give a shit.
They don't really bow to authority.
No.
So there's not really that. Well, it's not a huge leap to be a protester in that area because you don't really bow to authority anyway.
There's not much change.
It's just one step closer to holding a sign and directing that at somebody.
Yeah, aggressive sign waving. It worked great. I'd stand out on the corner and nobody would be paying attention to me. And
Aggressive sign waving.
And wave it at their car, and they'd worked great. They read the sign. Whether or not I scared them, it wasn't the point. But they still read the sign. And,
Or we'd stand next to each other with ironic signs. Like, we didn't start this, and the beginning is near, right next to each other.
Right?
Very ominous.
Wearing a gas mask and a Guy Fawkes mask.
Yeah.
No, we're not trying to freak them out any. Man, we had way too much fun out there on that street corner doing stupid stuff like that. The end is near. Free hugs. Yes. Two different signs, And we had signs like, depending on the way you stood with each other, completely changed up the meaning of them. Like, the end is near. Believe what you want. Free hugs. So, you can switch it up and have fun and play with the crowd, so to speak.
It's easier than getting spit on.
She was spat upon. I don't know how many of you know that, but she was actually a victim of a drive-by spatting.
Goodness sakes.
Yeah, no joke.
Making up words now.
None of that was a made-up word. Horrible grammar, but none of it was made-up words.
I thought it was a very effective illustrative word, so, I got the visual right when you said it. So, it looks like we're tapering down on questions. Do you guys have anything else you'd like to add to the group? I want to thank everybody for being here, and but now's your time. You got a soapbox. Go for it.
Are you sure you want to do that with me?
Well, I can cut you off in a couple of minutes. So.
Well, I first want to start out with giving appropriate love here to our off-site occupiers, I guess you could call them, like our buddy Hour here, who
so-called armchair warriors.
Without our buddy Hour Forum and his help, we would not have gotten the car, which would have kept us from getting out here. Which, frankly, his involvement with our world changed it drastically, and I don't think he has gotten the due respect.
We met the guy once.
Yeah, I don't think he's gotten the due respect that he deserves for and how much he helped us, how much his.
Well, and it's not just us either. The guy that got the chair and
he does a lot of work, so I want to give some love to him.
We weren't the first, and we weren't the last.
No, and another Ruby and Lippy and all these other people that have I feel that we get too much credit for what other people have done.
This guy spent like 3 hours or something trying to convince an entire populace of people that we were somehow heroes because we did the right thing and stood up for other people's rights or their civil rights, and I've never been called a hero in my life. It didn't fit well. It was kind of boxy, like,
it was
I'm
strange.
just this scuzzy little homeless kid.
Right, it was strange to be given labels like that. Like when I got arrested for the Santorum event, to become a celebrity in that jail cell was very strange. Yeah. And when we came out, to have heard that Hillary Clinton tweeted about us was.
But the guys behind the camera never get the kudos, and I think that's kind of a problem because you have so many great streamers and you have so many great people who are kind of like the people behind the curtain, and then you have guys like us who are just the face. You know what I mean? We do like that much work, but we're the face, and everybody else who just pours their heart into it, they get a lot more done and they get a lot less credit for it. So I think something has to be said about much like they say that the physical encampment was the tip of the iceberg for the whole Occupy movement, is that those of us who found ourselves a little bit of recognition, a little bit because people will see us on the street and they'll be like, oh, I know those guys.
Yeah, we've had many, many, many people come up. Hey, aren't you Rob Shawn? Yeah. We're like, who the fuck is this guy? Yeah. Oh, viewer. Hi.
but not enough credit gets given to those who are behind the screens, who are just a screen name and a color, who are just who are the funding for a lot of what other people do, and who are the support system. Like Coffee Talk would have never been anything if Occupy Earth hadn't held it up for so long.
Yeah. And we wouldn't have been anything if Mama Cat hadn't given us her hotspot to go off of right at first. And she is almost invisible in the Occupy world.
Yeah,
and
nobody knows who she is.
And Mama Cat was one of the founding members of Occupy Tacoma. Her and about 5 other people are the ones who really kicked off the Occupy Tacoma version of things. So,
and VJ never got enough credit either. You guys might know her from
DJ VJ girl.
Yeah, from Global Revolution. She never got enough credit.
She never gets the credit she should. And that woman worked her posh ass off. Okay, no, I have never. I love you, DJ VJ, and she will understand it when I say this, but this bitch occupied in $400 boots. She's out there waving a sign in a mink coat and $400 boots. Fabulous 1%er occupier. I love her to death.
Well, she has a sign that says "Revolution is sexy," so
she is hilarious. She was there with us in Seattle when we shut down the ports. She was our ride there and from. She was there when helping me get my eyes cleared out when I got pepper sprayed, and kept an eye on this one as she went running back to the line afterwards. And you know, VG's been right there with us. She's the one that got us all the whole Occupy Tacoma Occupy Supply gear. It was her doing that got everybody set up with that, the jackets and the thermals and the gloves and all the gear. And that was VG.
And people still didn't bother learning her name either.
Oh man, I felt bad for the guy who decided he was going to badmouth her while wearing Occupy Supply gear. 18 people tore him a new one. Excuse me? What did you just say? Oh man, I didn't even have to say anything. I just heard him say it, turned around and looked at him, and I... Woo-hoo-hoo.
Yep, and Ruby and her phone calls. Ruby doesn't get enough credit either. She's like a telephone warrior.
Man, she can pull up information like nothing else either.
And she always made food happen.
Every time.
Every time made food happen.
I think it was like, Ruby and
I have never known anybody more dangerous with a phone.
You're right.
Ruby's a phone ninja.
She is a phone ninja. She's dangerous, man. So, I'm glad she's on my side.
Yep. Yeah, so Sapphire Star, which is one of our people, is doing her and her partner are making an Ocu-Comics. They're graphic artists, so they're asking if you want to be into Ocu-Comics. They'll tell your story.
Absolutely.
We're such comic book geeks. That would be
total
awesome.
Comic book nerds. So I'm all for that.
Okay, well
I demand a cape.
Yep.
I demand a cape. The rest of the outfit's on you, but I demand a cape.
Yep. Well, you know what I say? Always trust your cape. That's it. Well, I want to thank you guys for being here tonight. It was absolutely delightful. I appreciate you taking your time. I don't know if you caught it, but we were on GR tonight, so you were getting.
So thank you, GR, for
yeah, thank you, GR. Thank you, Our Forum, for putting this up on your channel, and anybody else that was mirroring us. We appreciate your support, and don't forget to support all our streamers, our guests. Everybody has their information up. We'll have this in the archive with contact info and all that on there, and we really appreciate you guys participating. I want to thank the production team. Suze and Zena was the facilitator tonight. Clearly, good to see you. Chris is actually streaming Occupy Nashville GA tonight, so she's not here. And our good friend Uppity is swamped under the workload, so she wasn't able to be here tonight. But the OPN team is what makes these broadcasts possible. It's totally a team effort.
Get in touch with us and orchestrating all
it took a little bit of time, but we managed to make it happen, so I think it was worth it.
Well, in fairness to everybody, I will admit that the slowdown was probably my fault, because I just had so many things coming, but I really appreciate your patience, and it was wonderful to have you. I enjoyed having one-on-one conversation with you. So what I'm going to do is hit the stop button, archive this thing. If you guys want to stay on just for a minute, we'll chat afterwards, and then I'll join you guys back on the chat shortly. Thank you guys for watching. We love you all. Thank you, my production team. I love each and every one of you, and it was an awesome night. So I'll be back in just a minute.
you.